Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer from New Bedford, Massachusetts. I've been doing this show for about 3 years now, and it's a blizzard outside. It's currently um, January 29th, 2022. It's a blizzard outside. It looks like it's in anticipation for our coming year. It's the year of the tiger coming up in Chinese astrology. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that um, this is actually a good anticipation of the year of the tiger. Basically, I just want to discuss Chinese astrology just briefly for you, and then go on to the regular forecast. I'll give you all um, your indicators for each sign next. So as I was saying, it's the year of the tiger. Uh, February 1st it starts, and this actually looks to be a fairly interesting year. The tiger as a sign tends to be rather lucky. It can ease its way in and out of a variety of problems, but it also tends to be very emotional and passionate. So, in contrast to this past year, which has been very timid and very restrained, except in small cases, you'll see an outpouring of emotion over the next few months. I'm going to pair that up with Vedic astrology over the next few workouts, but basically, you can expect a lot of passion, a lot of activity, a lot of risk taking in the year of the tiger. Since it's a water sign, and I'm a water sign in Chinese astrology, it also tends to be very emotional, and it has strong beliefs and it adheres to those strong beliefs. And there'll be a variety of conflicts and power struggles around the world. Also, a wide variety of political scandals popping up. Uh, and this will be, again, across the entire spectrum. It'll be conservative governments and liberal governments. It'll be people in power and people not in power. So I think one of the things we're looking at right now is, especially for certain signs, and I haven't analyzed any um, any any certain political leaders across the system. I'll try to do that by next week, and I'll try to analyze where the problems will seem to be occurring. But um, we can expect some respected people to have downfalls, um, and even some less than respected people to have downfalls. But also there'll be, I would say, some shocking news around May or so. We have a significant eclipse in May that'll reveal certain um, destabilizing factors in governments around the world, and I would say even in the United States. I'm not expecting anything like a civil war. So, so again, like I said, get that right out of your head. Um, I don't think I am seeing a movement towards civil reform, which will come within the next 3 to 4 years or so. But basically, um, uh, we will be encountering a lot of, again, consistent with what I've seen in the Vedic astrology chart, attempted overthrows of governments, attempted revolutions, not in the United States, but attempted revolutions, and also um, new adjustments in the way that we view things. So a lot of existing institutions will be in serious trouble, especially in 2023. But for this year, the year of the tiger, it's very strong for passionate romances, very strong for luck. It's interesting because I think one of the things you'll see over the next few months is a lot of people jockeying for position. That's not really surprising in the United States because it's an election year, but this is true even in countries that aren't having elections or who aren't engaging in elected activities. And you'll see a lot of folks getting very, very upset with their current government. So it should be an interesting year. Also, because of the restraints that we've been under, because of things like COVID and various other things, I think you'll see a lot more protests and also more people, especially if they have pent-up romantic feelings, expressing them more um, aggressively, very quick romantic involvements. Um, the only issue with quick romantic involvements is they tend to have weak legs. And what I mean by that is essentially you'll meet somebody, you'll fall in love with them and not get to know the person, and is full of risk. But a lot of people will be enjoying risk more this year than in previous years. So, but again, it is important to note that there will be risk for a lot of folks, especially over the next 3 to 4 months. As Mars and Venus essentially come together and separate, and so I want to. So that's just a little prelude about a larger discussion about the Chinese New Year next week. I'll be happy to share that information with you then. And I want to also just give you a little bit of background about myself. I've been a practicing astrologer for over 30 years. And I've also been the president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, vice president of the Council of Vedic Astrology, on various boards of astrological associations, especially American Council of Vedic Astrology. And I'm also currently an instructor at Daira Academy, ACVA, and Kepler College. And I am working on my own book, and I do have plans to open an independent astrological school, which will be, I would say, very different from other astrological schools out there. So I think this will be something which will be pretty interesting to a lot of people. I also do readings, and the best place to contact me for readings is through my cell phone at 508-525-0001. Again, that's 508-525-0001. If anybody would like to study with me, I'm approachable for study, or you can study with me through Kepler or American College of Vedic Astrology or Daira. So there are a variety of ways you can study with me. And if you're interested in studying Vedic astrology and you just want to talk about that, you're more than willing to contact me. Not every teacher fits every student. I think I'm a good teacher, but I may not be the right teacher for you. And I know a lot of teachers, so I can make some recommendations to you if you want to study, but you don't want to study with me. If you don't want to study with me, I don't take that personally. It's a free country, and you have freedom of choice. Okay. So let's go on. Let's look at. Also, I just wanted to give the rest of my resume. I'm a Swami of the Temple of Kriya Yoga, doctoral degree in education, master's in business administration, bachelor's in sociology, and sometime music geek. So let's go back to our chart, and some exciting news today. In addition to the blizzard, is Venus going direct. So if you recall, over the past few weeks, I've been telling everybody not to make a lot of hasty romantic decisions because Venus was retrograde, and you'll be thinking about what you really want. out of life, and this is also creatively. So it's sort of a period in which a person sort of builds up their creative juices. So they want to do something different. Venus retrograde is a great time to do it. I found myself getting more and more interested in some of my more oddball um, music choices over the past few weeks, and that's been fun to look into. And I'll probably still do that because I just like being a little bit different in terms of what the music I like. But that's a personal choice. And as a matter of fact, over this past week, we also had Rahu and Ketu stationary direct. What does that mean? Well, basically, Rahu and Ketu are the north and south lunar nodes, and they're responsible for eclipses of the sun and the moon. And around I want to say the 1950s, there was a concept introduced of a retrograde motion and a direct motion for the lunar nodes. And the lunar nodes are essentially not real objects in the sky. They're points in space which are used to calculate when the sun will come in front of the moon, or excuse me, when the Earth will come between the sun and the moon, or when the moon will become between the sun and the Earth. And the latter is a solar eclipse, and the former is a lunar eclipse. So essentially, some calculational adjustments were made to make this formula a little bit more dead on in terms of calculating eclipses, and the concept of a stationary direct Rahu and Ketu, which is the north lunar node and the south lunar node, came about. So this past week we had that, and basically what it does is sort of resets the things that we're dissatisfied with. So essentially, it'll create blips in or disruptions in what we would call the natural flow of events. So you'll see a lot of things happening, like big significant events happening, like the Supreme Court justice retiring, or a lot of activity heating up against former President Trump, or even more so, like big events happening in Canada, where the Prime Minister just got ushered out of the Capitol for his own protection. So that's what these things tend to. They're like signal points. The 9/11 bombing, the 9/11 attacks, excuse me, that happened during a Rahu Ketu stationary direct event. So a lot of significant things happened during these events. It also marked what we're seeing as being essentially that, not flattening of the curve, but essentially a decline in hospitalizations with COVID, which peaked with the Omicron variant coming in, and essentially it looks like it's stabilizing and declining now. So these are like reversals or changes of direction. So you'll see the underlines up here. The underlines mean that essentially the planets are retrograde again, or the grahas. They're called grahas or seizers. They grab things, and they're retrograde again. But there was also, there was also an earthquake in Turkey. A lot of people getting personal threats on them, and so it's been kind of a. So after the full moon, I'm going to stop the share and start up again. After the full moon, this was a fairly intense full moon. In Capricorn, and we're going to see a new moon in Capricorn coming up within about 2 days, right? So it so essentially right now we're seeing certain things wind out, so if people feel like giving up things, they're giving them up right now. If people feel like surrendering or moving in different directions, they're doing so right now. But so this is a magnificent time to get rid of stuff you don't need or to give it to charity or something like that. However, it also means that it's not a time to start new projects. And you want to wait until February 1st or February 2nd to do that. And as a matter of fact, probably preferably until the end of the week when uh, the moon is in the same sign with Jupiter, number one, and number two, when Mercury goes direct around February 4th to February 5th. But basically, we still have a Mercury retrograde, and that's why I'm going to be clicking the up and down button a lot. And also, but that Venus direct is fascinating because a lot of people were feeling emotionally like they were being trapped or dragged into a bad situation. The thing about all these emotions is all these emotions that are triggered by the moon and Venus is this is something you absolutely have some control over. Okay, you're not, nobody is, everybody works at some level from the subconscious. Okay, so they have this sort of like subconscious impulses that we're not aware of that are programmed into our heads. And these are essentially where a lot of the obsessions connected with Rahu and Ketu come from. In Western astrology, we would use Pluto. So if we use Western astrology, Pluto's with Saturn and Mercury and Capricorn sign, in the sign of Capricorn. So that's going to give certain self-limiting concepts that we've inherited for ourselves. With Rahu, this gives us certain things about, this gives us limiting beliefs about what we can and can't have, or maybe it starts making us think we're being unrealistic about what we can or can't have. And it puts doubt into our heads. So we start, instead of pursuing what we want, we start spreading it and going off in that direction or this direction. And with Ketu, we have no idea what's causing it. Ketu's in Scorpio, so we have no idea what's causing it. But basically, from the chart, so you have two essentially different mechanisms causing the same thing. And that's why I call astrology what I would call astrology a self-referential system. And that is, no matter what system you look at, it's going to agree with with other systems. So we can have a system from my. It depends on which system speaks to you the most directly. And for me, Vedic helped me understand Western far better. But basically, from this chart, we have a Moon, Venus, Mars combination right now, which makes us very emotional about things. It makes us emotional about things like love, about anger, about what's the right way to do things, because Mars is in a very aggressive constellation. Yes, and the moon is in the same constellation right now. So essentially, we're very determined to have our way. Venus is in a less aggressive nakshatra. It's in Purvashada, and it's more connected with things like finding comfort or getting access to raw materials or or winning victories. So basically, this is one of the stars of victory, Purvashada, and and it essentially does have to do with justice and change in the world. All the planets. So when I'm speaking with you, when I drew up this chart, it was 306. If I go to update it, see if I can do this. I'll go for a now chart. And we'll go to New Bedford. Oh, I'm sorry. New Bedford. Oh, see, there's been any change. So since I drew up this chart, the signs have changed from the rising sign has changed from Gemini, which is the communicative nakshatra, to Cancer, or I'm sorry, which is the communicative sign, to Cancer, which is to a certain extent about power and emotion and control. Okay, so emotional control. Okay, or feelings. So right now so that's why I'm emphasizing control of feelings, because Saturn's aspecting Cancer. The moon is with Mercury, Venus is with Venus and Mars, my apologies. And that's the Lord of the first house. So this gives us a lot of conflicts connected with our emotions. And Jupiter's in the eighth house. That means it's going to be access to hidden knowledge or hidden information pretty soon. Okay. So I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any stretch of the imagination, but there will be some things that will be coming out over the next few months, which will be actually pretty interesting to people as they look at um, the events of the past 4 to 5 years. Um, and I'm not even talking politically. I'm talking about just in terms of um, overall patterns. The media is involved because Mercury's down here retrograde, and it will show some things that have been hidden, at least communicationally. But I would say more largely from media, through media resources. So again, this isn't an attack on the media. This is essentially there'll be essentially discoveries made. Also, this combination, Sun, Saturn, and Mercury retrograde, does indicate to a certain amount of state control. Okay, so, and again, I'm not saying that negatively. This is universal. This is across the world. This isn't necessarily unique to the United States. So a lot of those things will start to get exposed around the end of March into early April. And as a matter of fact, I think you'll start to see some of them start to get exposed around February 4th or February 5th. But I found it interesting to look at some of the internal dynamics um, in politics, at least in the United States, where we have both parties that have factions at war with each other. So you have a situation in which the moderates in both parties are outsiders. And I'm saying that deliberately. I'm saying the people who essentially don't agree with the majority of their party are being viewed as pariahs. So the Democrats have actually censured one of their senators, and this was after the Republicans had earlier this year censured, or last year censured some of their representatives, and or so I think it's kind of interesting to see this play back and forth, where there's a strong pull for party conformity, and that's that Sun-Saturn conjunction. The other thing is, this does tend to give a certain degree of conformity for me, a certain element of media conformity too. So essentially, you have warring media as well. We've had that for quite a few years, but it's really incredibly obvious now. And I'm not here to say who's telling the truth and who's lying. I think both sides are equally oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the right word. Equally matched. How's that for a non-committal word? Equally matched in terms of that. So this will create some conflicts over the next week. This will create, again, more attempts at control, and a lot of the judgment will be hidden away. A lot of the good judgment will be hidden away. In terms of politics, at least in foreign affairs, we want to look at the ninth house, and there are things going on behind the scenes in terms of foreign affairs that we're not seeing properly. There are quote unquote deals being made right now that we're not seeing. Mars aspects the ninth house, so it makes us more apt to believe that we're going to have war. Mercury's with Saturn, so there's more of an impulse to generate fear and anxiety. We have Mars aspecting the ninth, and Mars aspecting the first, and Mars aspecting the 12th, and Mars aspecting the first, so it's making everybody kind of angry. The idea of scarcity is the 12th house lord is in the 7th house, so some of that scarcity is in fact due to what I would call bungled governmental decisions. Now again, this is not just true here in the United States, it's true around the world. So again, this is not a criticism of any government or official. People are doing the best job they can, given their belief on how things should work and given the circumstances. But the population is upset. The moon stands for the general public, and is at least out of the range of Mars, but is still in the same sign of Mars. So you're going to see the general public kind of irritated and kind of depressed, at least for the beginning of the week. So I'm going to see what my time is. So let's go to the world map and see what's happening there. And I'm going to stop the share. And and one thing I try to do when I'm doing these broadcasts is not take sides, because when I do that, I lose. An astrologer will be affected by his or her own biases, okay? And I try to make myself as neutral as I possibly can, just so I won't end up trying to justify my position later on. So does it mean I don't have preferences? No, I have obvious preferences, but my preferences are kind of, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. They're kind of, I'm a moderate in a lot of ways. That's sort of where I've fallen on the political spectrum through the years. And I used to be much more radical when I was younger, much more left wing when I was younger, and I have been more conservative at certain times in my life. But basically, I feel most comfortable in the middle. So it's just give you my bias. So certain things need to change, certain things probably shouldn't change, and there's no merit to changing them. Am I going to give you specifics? Hell no. I'm no I'm no fool. Um, or maybe I am, but I just want to. So let's get back to a chart and look at the time space change. All right. So this is where the issues are in the world today. Okay. So we have a Sun-Saturn conjunction in Western Canada. Let's go further west. Let's go to Hawaii. Oh, not more volcanic activity in Tonga. Oh boy. Okay. It looks like there's a potential for either earthquakes or volcanoes in the South Seas. Maybe not in Tonga, but in the South Seas. Um, and again, a lot of weather activity out here. And this is also close to the Aleutian Islands as well. If we go over here, Hawaii's sort of like right in the middle of that period of that region. So you'll start to see some isolation felt in Hawaii's part, maybe some depressing of the economy. Sun and Saturn indicate heavy government controls in Canada. This has nothing to do with the truckers driving into Ottawa. By the way, this is just in general. We do have a Moon and Mars line running through basically Nebraska, North and South Dakota, Oklahoma, and eastern Texas. But we do have a Jupiter line intersecting up here, so this actually looks good. So Nebraska just became a focus of because they're one of the states that called for the 17th state to call for a constitutional convention. So this is interesting stuff. The Moon and Mars combination. This isn't a big news story, but it's a big news story to me because it's been a while since there have been quite so many states, or 17 states, that are calling for a constitutional convention, which is as close to a revolution as I think you'll see, or a civil war as I think you'll see in the United States. There's a Moon Mars combination over here, so some violence in Oklahoma, eastern Texas, and down through Mexico and into Nicaragua, and all the way down into Chile and Peru, and Colombia, it looks like to me, and Venezuela, and some flooding in Brazil and Colombia. Definitely some problems with communication, some scandals connected with communication out of New York. This could be what's happening with the Trump trial, although I don't necessarily think that would be the only thing affected. I think you're going to see some scandals coming out of Connecticut, Pennsylvania, even Washington, D.C. over the next few months. The other thing is Mercury's also passing through Brazil, and it looks to me like there'll be some civil unrest in Brazil as well, as we have the Sun-Saturn line here. right in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, we see a Saturn line going right over the Azores Islands. Um, Part of my family came from those islands. Um, and so it looks like there's some poverty or some danger to them. And down here, and over here, I believe that's Cape Verde. I believe that's Madeira. And if we go down here, 1, 2, 3, 4. I should know this better since I'm Portuguese, right? And the west coast of Africa has a Jupiter line. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing. Jupiter lines are typically pretty good. So that means there can be some cures or some health um, corrections happening within that part of the world. So that's actually good. Um, and you have nothing passing over England, but England will benefit a little bit from that Jupiter line. But it's got a Mars line right over Germany, France, and Italy. Boy, there's a lot of, I would say a lot of civil unrest or a lot of disturbance. This goes all the way down into Libya, Algeria, and down to Central Africa, and down into Ghana. Um, this is fascinating because it looks like Europe overall, including um, um, Norway, Sweden, and Finland, will be kind of irritated at each other. There'll be a lot of dislike of domestic policies and a lot of passion to overturn those. Mercury's passing through Finland, Eastern Europe, and Turkey. So again, some dismay or disruption connected with media, but also since Mercury rules Earth, I'm a little bit worried about earthquake activity in that part of the world. So, so essentially, this part of the world over here, down through Egypt and down through Eastern Africa, looks like it'll be a bit disruptive. Some scandals, some bad actors, but also some possibility of not major earth changes, but like I said, earthquakes or patterns like that. If we go over to Iran, a lot of disagreement with the government in Saudi Arabia, for that matter, and so again, kind of repressive administrations or regimes down in this part of the world, and also in Russia. So, but again, I'm not seeing any activity moving towards, a war in Ukraine. Um, yeah, so I'm hoping I'm right about that, by the way. But since war brings misery, that Saturn line doesn't please me that much. But I'm a little bit more concerned about Ukraine itself turning a little bit more repressive or closed down. And we have a Rahu line going up through India and to Western China, essentially the area which was Tibet or is still Tibet to many people, and out into Eastern Russia. So there'll be some panic close to Delhi, close to Goa, and close to Bombay. There's a Jupiter line running up here. And so, again, watch out for border conflicts in between Pakistan and uh, and India. And if we move a little bit to the east, there's a bunch of lines indicating repressive governmental activities and popular unrest in China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Indonesia, and some potential flooding in China, Borneo, and Indonesia. Mercury is passing over Japan and the Philippines, and Western Australia, so some governmental scandals are bound to show up in that part of the world, and also some media scandals. Sun and Saturn. So again, Australia is kind of closed down or packed, maybe a little bit fearful. Jupiter's well placed in this chart. It's actually good, but it's really not touching anybody, at least not any major population centers. So this benefits New Zealand to a certain extent, but it also benefits Japan a little bit. But I'm a little bit more concerned about disruptions in communications in Japan, and also disruptions in communications in the Philippines and down to the south here. So these aren't bad combinations. These aren't horrible combinations, but there's stuff to look out for. Again, when we get planets clustered together, that's usually an indication that a big event is in the process of happening. These planets are, the sun will be moving out of that particular cluster around February 15th, but you'll see Venus and, excuse me, you'll see Venus and Venus, Saturn, and Mercury all in Capricorn in around mid-April. Sun will be in Aquarius around mid-February, around mid-February, and Sun will be in Aquarius at mid-February. So you can expect to see some changes. The mid-February date with the Sun and Jupiter coming together is actually a good thing. To me, it symbolizes progress in the fight against COVID, because more governments will be more effective in fighting COVID than they have been. And we're looking at perception as well. So although the economy itself is, the recent figures will come in, the economy in the United States grew by 6.1% in the last quarter, or over the year in 2021. Number one, it was coming back from a very low place. Number two, people going into supermarkets and seeing items not available or having to wait for products, and seeing large scale inflation, or pretty healthy inflation, is not a confidence builder. So I can remember back to the car years. That old 1978 was a year in which the economy looked like it was doing better, but the inflation rate was still high. So those are the things you have to watch out for. Now I'm going to go back to the screen again. And as those of you who've seen the past few shows know, I'm doing this for a definite reason, as I'm trying to make sure so let's look at the individual signs over the next week. And so for Aries, a few changes. Basically, work life will become incredibly difficult. Supervisors will be moody, aggressive, and will demand to be listened to. Rahu is in the second house, so again, the person feels like they're either not being listened to or they're not getting enough money. And also these folks will feel like they're not getting all the facts. But overall, this is really, this sign is very, very, very career focused and monetarily focused right now. So money should start to improve for Aries. For Taurus, now again, this is May 15th to June 15th. Rahu and Ketu are going to be in the sign until mid-March. So those feelings of dissatisfaction or lack of interest on a relationship partner probably won't go away right away. But at least Venus, the Lord of the first house, will move into the ninth house in February, and you'll start to feel some signs of hope for about another week. Though it'll seem like you're kind of like we're caged. And again, career-wise, these folks will be expected to give advice where they're really not sure what they want themselves in life, and they'll also be expected to be loyal and true and hardworking as well. So it's not a bad combination. It's just difficult emotionally for this sign. Monetarily, they'll probably do pretty well, but money is still going to be really until around the end of March before they start seeing any real money. Gemini has its Lord in the eighth house, so again, this sign will feel a little bit boxed up. It'll get a lot of relief from physical activity. It'll feel very impetuous relationship-wise. Feel very impulsive, and maybe prone towards making commitments over the next couple of weeks. But relationships overall will tend to be bumpy for this sign over the next couple of months. So again, that's just something to be aware of. But the passionate nature of the sign will be very strong. But in terms of their true personality, it's sort of like hidden away or repressed, and they're not enjoying that about themselves. This tends to be kind of a showy sign. It likes to communicate. It likes to get out and meet people. And but with Jupiter in the ninth house, it can actually give good advice and fairly freeing advice. So, and also it will be listened to with respect. Cancer has some relationship problems, some communication problems with its relationship partner, and overall from the chart, this isn't a bad combination, but there'll still be a feeling that the sign is kind of is hemmed in by benefics. So we have Venus in the sixth house and Jupiter in the eighth house hemming this sign in. So that's good. It will actually make relationship life work, but it'll feel like the relationship's a lot of work. So this is between July 15th and August 15th births. And so that's going to continue for about another 5 months or so, that the relationship will seem like a lot of work, and it'll start to get a little bit better after that. But it's just gonna feel like a lot of pressure is on the person to keep things going. And also relationship partners will seem a little bit depressed or a little bit sad. So that's just something to deal with for the time being. For Leo, Jupiter brings in more relationship opportunities with auto-eccentric people, a lot of desire for career success, and also with K2, some feeling of detachment from home, so not that much interest in home life. Fifth house has Venus, Moon, and Mars in it, and that should be fairly good for the sign in terms of children's luck, although children would be a little bit emotional or unstable. And sixth house, again, the sign has to watch out for illnesses. That'll pass after February 15th. And that Jupiter aspect on the first house is very good. It'll bring in more unexpected gains and also luck from previous events. For Virgo, Virgo has K2 in the third house. So again, it'll show a certain amount of courage. Again, arguments at home. This is going to be a pattern for the sign for the next couple of months. Or power struggles at home. And the Mars-Venus conjunction, people will feel very passionately about what they believe. With the moon there, both relationship partners will be a little bit moody or difficult to deal with. And also relationship partners will have health problems, although they do seem to be getting better. Fifth house, in terms of personal happiness and joy, they get a lot of their self-fulfillment through work. A lot of what they've inherited is work-related. Supervisors are a little bit uncertain of themselves or a little bit trying to establish themselves. And there could be shifts in supervisors before March. For Libra, Libra has no planets in the first house. The first Lord is in the third house. So there's a strong desire to go out and grab what the sign wants. There's been a real interest or obsession with occult or metaphysical matters with the sign over the past year and a half. And speech, a lot of what Libra says has been misunderstood over the past year and a half. It can't seem to say the right thing at the right time. So that'll continue until March, and then it'll go to the first house, and the sign itself will get a little bit more spacey, but a little bit luckier in terms of unexpected relationship opportunities, also unexpected increases in workload and unexpected opportunities too. The good time to run for political office if you're interested in that, but also a good time to strike out on new creative endeavors. The third house is very strong, as we said before. Fourth house, some unhappiness, some feelings of constraint in home life. Fifth house is very good. Good potential for love affairs if you're interested in that. And around the summertime, Rahu will be moving into the seventh house, so it'll give contacts with people in foreign countries. For Scorpio, Scorpio has K2 in the first house, Rahu in the seventh. Not a bad combination. The Lord of the first house in the second house, along with Venus. So this gives more money luck to the sign than it's had for a few months. And Saturn and Mercury in the third house, a lot of courage, a lot of determination to work hard. Jupiter's in the fourth house. You'll start to see more status or more prestige coming into the sign. And Rahu's in the seventh house, so it'll tend to give difficulty in pleasing partners. So President Biden has this rising sign, at least from the chart I've seen, and we're seeing some of these things manifest for him right now. And I find it interesting when you can look at the chart of a president or something like that and see the patterns that are affecting him. So I'm just saying that. So, but I think overall, one of the things that that's plaguing him lately is poor communication, or the sense that he's being a little bit, controlling, more controlling. That's the right word. And I think that'll start to move out. He'll start to get more of a balance within a couple of weeks. Sagittarius has a few planets in the first house, so there's this real strong desire for an ideal relationship partner, but there's a feeling of being constricted. Now I'll go away in a couple of weeks. Don't worry about that. But there's this, and also there's this sense this sign has that it has to be careful what it says. It has to be really, really cautious about what it says. Jupiter's in the third house, so again, very strong for politeness. Rahu's in the sixth. There's a lot of anxiety about health issues. This is the same rising sign as I ascribe to the United States, so that makes sense. And Jupiter's in the fourth house. So I'm sorry, in the third house. So there's a strong sense of engaging in unconventional behavior or engaging in a very rigid system of interpretation. So that's interesting, at least from the chart. And this applies to individual Sagittarians too, not just United States Sagittarians. Capricorn still has that Sash Yoga in the first house. Again, it's kind of interesting because on the one hand, the Sash Yoga has a strong connection with people. On the other hand, it likes to tell people what they want to do, what they should do. So, and this is also coming down to the media as well. And this is also happening to Sagittarians on an individual basis. So I think from this particular sign, we'll see the sign feeling constrained, like it has to tell everyone what to do. Rahu's in the fifth, a lot of obsession with luck and also with politics, and also K2 in the 11th, unusual or strange friendships, and Moon, Mars, and Venus in the 12th. A lot of money spent on love affairs or romantic involvements, and also on friends. For Aquarius, Jupiter in the first house is a great placement. It tends to cause a lot of knowledge to pour into the sign, which is good, but again, it can bite off more than it can chew. And also, again, that feeling of being constricted is strong because the Lord of the first is in the 12th house. So that's a caution. Finally, but the 11th house does indicate sudden increases in earnings, but they get spent as soon as they come in. Finally, Pisces, and also some fame and recognition internationally for the sign. For Pisces has a lot of desire, a lot of ambition, a lot of work life, critical or difficult supervisors, but also strong interest in spirituality. And the 10th house has Moon, Venus, and Mars in it, and that's very good for creative work. And the 11th house has strange or restrictive friends in it. Jupiter, Lord of the first, in the 12th house, so this sign is showing signs of being very giving, very generous. So that's not a bad thing, but within a few months, it'll take back some of that wealth. All right, so that's it for this week. I want everybody to be well, to be happy, and I'll see you next week. In the meantime, namaste, and I love you all. Again, if you like what I'm doing, please subscribe, please tell your friends, please share with your friends, and so we can build up the membership of the channel. Thanks a lot, folks. And so I can bring you better programming. Thanks, folks. See you next week.